You're thinking later. Okay.
I'm speaking. Hi, good night to everyone. Welcome to Gyals Create. Gyals Create. It is a project from S.V.G, which is a non-profit organization meant to empower the Caribbean woman through mentorship, education, and mentorship. Did I mention that?
Yeah.
What's the other goal? Education. So for the month of March, we were meant to host a bunch of workshops and this panel, but COVID hit, so we have to postpone everything. So this is one of the projects that we're hosting. One project we had last week was how to write your business canvas, which is an introduction to your business plan. And then we also had budgeting 101, and we also had a wellness day with Free Spirit, S.V.G, and Happy Brown Girls, sorry. And so tonight we end our project for the year with you guys, and so thank you for coming tonight. Also, if our merch is meant, anytime you buy our merch, you help to adopt classrooms in the Caribbean, specifically the creative fields, because that's the least funded, unfortunately, in the Caribbean. So that's our mission, and thank you again. I'm not gonna stay long. So I hand you over to Catherine Fraser. Thank you.
Hello everyone, and to everyone joining us via live stream, to the audience here tonight, and to our amazing panelists. It is my pleasure to moderate tonight's discussion on behalf of GAL, and what we are trying to do is find out how these gals do what they do. So GAL, how, right? Because we need to inspire, and we need to let other women, particularly in small island, S.V.G, and other small island states, inspire creativity, inspire the will to go out and pursue your dreams, even in spite of the challenges that we do face, and sometimes we are our own challenge. So hopefully through this discussion we're going to get information that will totally uplift and completely encourage everybody to pursue their creative passions tonight. So without further ado, let me introduce to you our panelists. On my far left we have Zara De Freitas of Happy Brown Girls. Next to Zara is Odini Sutherland of Peter Odini. We also have Sharika Sayers, a fine artist. Yes. And next to Sharika we have Nadia Huggins, an artist as well. And finally, rounding out our panelists tonight is Enye Kabala, who is an artiste. At this time, we're going to let each of our panelists introduce themselves and what they have been doing in the creative industry, their own personal projects, their brands. Gonna let them introduce themselves to you. So let's start with Zara.
Good night, everyone. I hope everyone's having a wonderful evening. My name is Zara. I am the co-founder of Happy Brown Girls. Happy Brown Girls is a collective group of women of color that will come together to create a space of wellness within St. Vincent and the Grenadines. I felt that after some time, we were looking for a space where we can take care of our mind, body, souls, and spirits. And I was looking for that space here in St. Vincent, and I couldn't find it, so I decided to try and create one. We have a great time, we share, it's a safe space, we learn different things, and we take care of ourselves. So I've created Happy Brown Girls to learn and grow and build women just like us, mothers, sisters, daughters. Sometimes we go through life and we don't know how to maneuver and to navigate. And I think that we can learn from each other on how to navigate through these tools and practices. So that's Happy Brown Girls.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Odini. Let's hear about Pizza Odini.
Okay, so good night everyone. My name is Odini Sutherland and I am the designer behind the brand Pito Odini, which essentially is a menswear brand. I've been kind of forced into making clothes for girls, unfortunately, I'm not sure. But menswear is actually my thing, that is what I like. I also like creating things like textiles and prints. Haven't been able to do that much recently, but hopefully in the next coming months. Pito Odini for me is, it's just like one of those crazy things you kind of get forced into because the universe kind of wants you to do it, because I didn't really plan. And my friends were like, we're having a fashion show, you're going to launch your brand at this fashion show. And I was like, you sure? And they're like, yeah. So that's how it kind of started. And then it kind of just grew from there. And so here we are about 6 years later. This year has been a bit of a, okay, I'm not really going to stress myself too much because the universe is saying, relax. So next year, hopefully, things would start to kind of make sense again. And that has been it. But other than that, I'm a marketing person, so that's probably my second thing there. And a professional nomad, I think, is the other thing. So yeah, that's me.
Thanks, Odini. And Sharika.
Okay, good night everyone. My name is Sharika Sayers. I am the owner creator of Black Canvas Studios. I am a fine artist. I specialize in painting, drawing, sculpting, photography, design, filmmaking, and here and there. Fine arts in general. My business is Black Canvas Studios mainly because I like starting my canvases on black. I would not go into the whole story as to why I do that. I just can't start on a white canvas for some reason. I can, but I just don't like to. I'm recently the new curator for our, we've just opened National Art Gallery here in St. Vincent in hopes of pushing visual arts from the inside of St. Vincent, outside of St. Vincent. Art is not as, hyped here in St. Vincent as it should be. We have a lot of talented artists here. There is no platform for us. So me being an artist myself, I'm kind of trying to find that opportunity to give artists that platform to, say, here I am. We don't really have that voice, and hopefully soon we will have somewhat of a voice. So that's basically what I do. So yeah.
Thanks, Sharika. Nadia.
Yes. Hi, good night, everybody. Thanks for coming on a Friday night. Karen, thank you for hosting this. It's really cool to be on a panel with all these women that I've grown up with and worked with in some capacity. I'm Nadia Huggins. I'm a visual artist. I work primarily in photography, although I do kind of dabble a little bit in film sometimes. But I'm kind of like Superman in a way because in the day I'm a graphic designer, at night I'm a photographer. So I usually when I introduce myself to people, I say I'm a designer because it sounds more serious than saying I'm a photographer. And that's kind of like one of the interesting things about being an artist in Simmons. You're always trying to validate what you do and make it seem more credible. So for me, I've kind of learned to have these two kind of professional creative fields that I can move between. But I think at the heart of what I do photography. My work is centered around kind of a documentary conceptual practice, and it kind of explores the idea of what it means to be on an island, whether it's the landscape or how people are influenced and how they interact in that kind of space. So yeah, my work kind of pushes that concept in a very contemporary sort of way. Where it's going, what I'm doing with it, I don't know. I'm just kind of going with the flow. I've been going with the flow of it since I've been about 18, and it seems to be it seems to be picking up interest, and it seems to resonate with people in a certain way. So I'm just kind of trying to remain true to whatever that is. I don't know if that kind of gives you an idea of what I do, but that's
Perfectly.
that's my focus. Yeah.
Thanks, Nadia. And Amy, tell us about you.
Good night. Hi, everyone. Thank you for being here. Karen, amazing event. Thank you for having us. My name is Enye Kagbala. I am an artist. I work in sound, song, moving image, performance. I'm kind of focused on like telling stories through song and sound and performance. Right now I've been doing a project with the band Elephant Disco, which is the musical collective in London that I was working with when I was living over there. So we just started to release some material that we've been working on for many years. I've been performing for a while. My work is just, I focus a lot on like life cycles, my themes about life cycles and existence of humanity, of like why we are and why we do what we do, and that's like the most serious side of what I do. And then I also do more like fun music for dancing and just creating vibes. So
Nice.
yeah.
Thank you. All right, so we have a very interesting and diverse panel tonight that hopefully our listening, viewing audience will be able to relate to on some level. I'm pretty sure everybody is going to be taken care of tonight. If you're looking for inspiration, you're looking for answers and encouragement. So at this point, we are going to start having our discussion, and the way we're going to do this is we're going to start with some questions, and the questions will stimulate the discussion from each of our panelists' perspective. Some questions are going to be more geared toward one panelist than others, and that's because because it's a diverse panel. You want to get the most out of each panelist's experience, and everybody's experience is so different along the journey, the creative journey. And we also got more inspiration. I got more inspiration for questions from just the introduction, so I made some notes.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, yes. So let's get started. The first thing to break the ice here, crush the ice, it's been broken, let's crush it now. Did you always know you wanted to be where you are? So, Enye, being in sound, in song, in performance, did you always know from a little girl that this is where you wanted to be?
I kind of started singing and making music when I was like 13. So yes, I did always want to do something creatively. I wasn't really sure where it would go, but I started making music at 13, and I would always kind of dabble in music and then like stop and not do music for a while. But I did lots of performances at church, so I would do loads of like gigs at church. That's how it kind of started. And then when I was moving to London, I moved to London to actually study fashion, but I moved with the intention to also do music and like coincided with music at the same time. So I never really wanted that to die, even if I was doing fashion.
If you're doing something else.
So I kind of slowly started doing music while I was in London and just like trying stuff out. And these things take a lot of time. Like you would know, like the process is like doing art. It just takes a lot of time. So I was just doing it until I finally got to the point where I felt like I was ready to release music.
Okay.
So yeah.
Is there any of our panelists who you're doing something now that you did not imagine yourself doing? Odini, I think that's you. Zara, I know that's you. So let's hear from you guys. Odini, go first, and then we'll tackle Zara.
It's gonna be ridiculous. As a child, I wanted to be a detective. Why not? So I was a big nerd. I read like Nancy Drew and Hardy Boys like all day, every day. So I just thought this was like the coolest thing. I wanted to be a detective. And I remember I'd walk around the house with like little bottles of powder just looking for fingerprints. It was really ridiculous. And then I wanted to be a vet because I love animals. So I thought this would be perfect. But then one of my dogs had to have surgery and I went, right, I can't be a vet, so that got scrapped. Then I wanted to be a journalist because I liked writing. I still do like writing, but then that just never worked out. Oh my gosh. And then I was studying to be a civil engineer and I was like, this is definitely not it. So that didn't last. And then somewhere along the way, I used to remember like, I used to be hanging out with my friend and she had this Crayola fashion design kit.
I remember that.
Right.
With the
With like the
thing,
Barbie
and then you go
stencils and
over.
stuff. So we'd be like at her house like every weekend doing these things and I just thought, well, this is really cool. And it was something that was always in the back of my mind, but growing up here, it never felt like this is something I can actually go and study. So it was just like whatever. So I went to be an engineer and like the first day of school, literally, it was like the first day of school, like we were doing orientation. And initially I think I wanted to do architecture because I still wanted to design. But I was in this Civ, it was literally Civ 101, go figure. And the lecturer was like, in this course, basically we destroyed the dreams of architects. I went, right, I made a mistake today. And that was it. So I lasted like 2 years on that course and I was like, I'm done. And I came back home, marketing, and then I was like, you know, I'm just gonna do design because I keep getting pulled back to it. And then my mom was like, well, if that's what you wanted to do, why didn't you just go and do that? I was like, oh, I didn't think it was like a real thing.
Yeah.
So that was just it. So I just picked up, I was working at the time, I'm like, I'm gonna go study fashion now. And everybody was just like, okay. And I went and it was like the best and the worst time of my life because fashion tutors are like the worst because they're mostly like failed designers. So
we did the same course.
exactly, right.
Years, yeah.
So like my foundation was fine because that was like fun. You get to explore and you got to do like different things, and that's when I wanted to actually design textiles. And then I went to start my bachelor's degree, and I remember the first year was amazing. It was the best year ever. And then I just did this elective in menswear, and I just thought, this is it. Like I never felt like more like this was the thing for me to do. And so I switched courses because I actually didn't start studying that. So I switched like in the last semester of that year. And then we got new tutors the next year, and it was terrible. It was so bad. But it was still enjoyable because I enjoyed what I was doing, but the tutors were just awful. And yeah, so you'd like spend all your effort doing something and then be like, well, that is absolute crap.
Well, this is a good discussion because so many young people start off, well, number one, you mentioned not feeling as though pursuing fashion was something that was credible or even something that was possible, recognizable, coming from a small island state. And that's the story for quite a few people, I think, in the creative atmosphere generally. So there's that, and then there's the thing of you're supposed to know what you want to do by the time you get to community college even, right? Community college or university, you're supposed to know. And there's so many stories, I'm sure, like yours, where you feel as though you're being pushed in one direction, whether it be from society or family and what's not, but you're just not feeling that. It's not resonating with you. And it's nice to see that you have found your niche, like you fought through until you've gotten to something that you actually enjoy. Zara, tell us your story of how we ended up here.
It's a long story.
Okay, give us, the original question was, did you always know that this is what you wanted to do?
Well, I've always had compassion, and I've always had compassion for women and children. Growing up, my dad used to always say that I am a jack of all trades and a master of none. I was always good at lots of different things, but I never had that avenue or that freeway to say this is what I want to do. And growing up in New York and in a Caribbean household, it's like doctor, lawyer, accountant, and it's like you just start and you think, okay, well, I'm gonna be a doctor because I was bright in school, not bright enough to be a doctor, mind you. I thought I was bright enough to be a doctor, but was not bright enough to be a doctor. And went off to college, was not prepared for college at all, dropped out of college, started working, started making the money, and it was just like, you just start living your life. And I've always had sort of a soft spot for children. My mother has a daycare center for 40 years. She started the daycare center because of me, and I now work with children, and it was a natural progression for me, opening up my space with Kitty's Corner. And, seeing women, being a woman, getting married at a very young age. I got married at 24 years old, came down to St. Vincent, moved to St. Vincent, left New York, my whole life, my whole lifestyle, everything changed. But I was able to settle in St. Vincent comfortably. It wasn't like such a culture shock where I'm like, okay, I gotta get out of here. It was all right, but seeing the difference in women and some of the social norms in women, and being married for such a long time and then not being married anymore, and then being single in St. Vincent, and trying to find different social groups, and it was just very, very hard for me to navigate for the last 5 years. And I, being in my 40s now, I wanted to provide a space for women to learn from women like me, and for me to learn from women ahead of me that color outside the lines. And as much as you may look straight-laced and be straight-laced, we're all kind of weird and awkward and just don't have it together. And being married at such a young age and creating a life and a lifestyle, kid, dog, car, house, and then having that all kind of be stripped down, I just, my level of compassion increased. Yes. And I realized that we women need each other, because nobody is going to really take care of us like us. Because men sort of sometimes don't really understand what we have to navigate, being moms and wives and women and sisters. It's just tough. So I wanted to really create a space where we can be safe and we can be comfortable and we can talk about things that that hurt, and also things that make us happy, and it's, now that I'm looking back and I'm moving into that sweet spot of adulthood where you can look back and like start to connect the dots. Yeah. And the dots are now connecting in my life where a situation that may have happened when I was 18, 19 now has circled back. I'm sorry, I use my hands a lot. I'm sorry.
It's very Caribbean.
Circle back, and very dramatic. Circle back to why. The whys are now being answered. When you're going through your 20s and even your 30s, it's like, you're just running through life because everybody expects you, especially grown-ups. I look back at my parents and I'm like, why did you allow all of this to happen? Didn't you? Now that I'm a little bit older, so, it's all starting to make sense. And we move through our 20s and 30s with nothing making sense. And then it's like, okay, so I'm going to try and help my sisters that are a little bit younger, help them to connect the dots a little bit faster so that it's not so difficult.
And I like this because what I'm getting from this is that struggle and challenges, and when we feel stripped down to nothing and everything that we're used to has somewhat fallen away, and now we're kind of left there kind of naked. Yes. And not knowing where to go next. That presents, sometimes it presents your next step. Yes. Your next step sort of unfolds in front of you, and this is where, Happy Brown Girls came from. It came out of your need, it came out of your struggle, and now other women can benefit from this. Now, this isn't necessarily where I saw the discussion going next, what I'm about to ask next, but Zara mentioned, women need to be able to rely on each other. And I think that the way we have been socialized, and I don't think this is just a small island problem, I think this is a woman issue. The way we have been socialized is we've been socialized to compete. And that competition means that we have to put up a perfect front a lot of the time. So we're doing well, we have everything put together, and I do not need help.
And we need help.
And we do need help. So my question to you guys now is, how do you think that, what do you think is necessary for women to start being more supportive? How do we start breaking down some of these barriers that that exist among women? How do we start breaking that down outside of Happy Brown Girls, right? Because that's one. But do you have, especially in the creative industry, this is not a big niche for women, right? Not in St. Vincent, at least. It's not huge. So what, in your perspective, do you think you need from other women? Do you even think you need other women to be supportive of you?
Yeah, definitely.
I mean, I can go. I mean,
Yeah, go
for
ahead.
me, like I started off working in a very kind of male-driven industry. Like I wanted to study film when I was 18. Didn't have the opportunity to go to school, so I ended up actually working at a local production company here, like a video production company, doing advertising, music videos, that kind of stuff. And it was just men, like there was just a bunch of men calling out serial numbers for lenses and stuff, like all the time. And it kind of isolates you a bit because like there's this expectation of women to perform in a particular way in that environment. So I didn't have like any female like creatives to kind of guide me through. I was lucky that I had like some very open-minded, like willing men to assist me through that process and teach me a lot. But I think it was just going through that I realized that there was a gap, and I needed to build relationships with other women who were doing stuff. So I mean, I would collaborate with people Enya, Odini, I've worked with these people in some capacity in the past, because I realized the only way to kind of grow with my own sort of creative thinking was to collaborate with other women who were dealing with like similar types of issues. I mean, not necessarily issues, but like just kind of thinking about things in a different way. And you don't always get that dynamic right with men. I mean, sometimes you do. There are a lot of very open-minded and willing and helpful men out there, but there are just some things you just don't get, you know. And it's really important to be able to create that space somehow to collaborate with each other. I mean, how we do that, it's just again like having discussions like this, like sharing our pains, like sharing our joys, like this type of thing. Like it's really important to have like open communication amongst each other, and find ways to like recognize strength in one another, in each other that you might not necessarily have.
Yes.
And find out how to collaborate with each other's strengths in some way and just create something new. Like it doesn't have to be with the intention of doing anything like to sell. Like it can just be like a creative idea that you want to explore and just go out there and just make something happen with each other. I mean, for me, that's how I've done it.
I think that I recently hosted a workshop for women in craft, and I think that was one of the biggest discussions that we had, was that they needed to learn that it was not so much supposed to be about competition. And I think everybody had this idea, well, in craft, there's only so much you can do. While living in a small island, that's the idea that they had. But I had to open to them that, I mean, you and I could be making the same product, but you and I can also help each other come up with ideas on how we can make our products better than it is, right? Not necessarily competing against one another, but helping one another excel. And then that way, when more than one people, work together, we can all sell together, right? I find that it flows better that way when you help one another, and instead of, oh yeah, I want to outsell you, and I need to get this better than you, and then you get jealous if somebody has a better idea than you, and then it kind of brings that negative energy in the whole thing. And I think more of these open forums, letting women know that it's okay to help one another, instead of fighting one another, we'll all get there, right? There's enough customers for everybody. You don't have to limit yourself to one area. St. Vincent isn't as far as it goes. So I think more open forums would help, more, less fighting one another, less battling, like showing people it's okay to come together. I think that would help.
Okay, so interestingly, you mentioned, there are enough customers for everybody. Two things come to mind there. Success, do we measure success only in terms of monetary value?
Exactly, that's another thing.
And the other thing is, we do live in a small island, which means our population is pretty small,
Right.
relatively small. But why are we limiting ourselves to this population? We have some panelists who have been able to reach beyond these shores, right, in taking their craft outside of S.V.G. Is that a challenge, though?
It is a challenge if you want it to be a challenge. I always tell people in my field, visual arts, you won't succeed in visual arts if you're not passionate about it. It's something that you have to say, okay, am I willing to stay up hours in the morning doing this? Like, am I willing to put in the hours to market my business? If I don't keep practicing at what I'm doing, I'm not gonna get better. So you have to be consistent. You have to want to get there. In everything, but visual arts, speaking from experience, you have to be passionate about it. So if you're not gonna get anywhere. So it just depends on how much you want to put into it, right?
Yeah.
So.
Okay, does anybody else have any advice in terms of how to expand your customer base? Like, whether it is expanding nationally or regionally, internationally, how is that done? How does a creative get to do that? I'm imagining networking is something that is absolutely necessary. Do you think we have an emphasis here on networking, like building relationships? Do our people on a large scale know how to do that? Is that truly important in being able to get it out?
It is important. Sorry.
I think having a good visual brand strategy helps significantly. Networking is important. I've been a computer nerd my entire life. I've just started to kind of actually socialize with people in my later years. But in the beginning, I did everything online. Right. I've gotten my image, and that's the great thing about photography. Images travel. You don't have to interact with people. I think it's a bit more difficult with fashion because it's a tangible product that you're dealing with. But sound, images, you can be an invisible person just doing that and get that out there, and people will be curious about who you are just based on that kind of idea of what your image is.
But you do still need to network to an extent, even if it's online.
You do kind of build relationships online or in person. When I started thinking about how do I network with people locally, I'm okay, I have a drink budget. Every month I spend X amount to go out and drink every Friday night. Just talk to people and let them know what you're doing. You don't have to be in their face and aggressive about it, but at least kind of make people aware that you're doing something. Things are happening, And
I'm curious. Sorry, Emily. But I'm curious about being stuck behind the screen. Because you've been successful before you started being more social. You have been successful. How do you what do you think was your secret for getting recognition for your images? Yes, images travel, but I can post an image and you guys may never see it. Or it may not get around. What do you think?
It's really tricky because the way my images, how I started off and the way my images look versus the way they look now is so different. But I guess for me, it's about being vulnerable in a certain way. I know that I'm doing something good, and this is really disgusting and visceral, but if I want to throw up when I have to put that image out, then I know it's probably the thing that I need to do. And if it's resonating with me on a gut level like that, then chances are it's going to resonate with other people out there. So I don't know if that really answers your question, but I guess in that way it's about being true to yourself and like the image and what you believe in.
Yeah.
That
And
helps.
you had a.
Well, okay, I don't even, I've forgotten.
You-
No, it's coming back now. But what
Okay.
I was actually gonna say something with what Nadia was talking about. I mean, you've been very consistent, and I think that's what it is. Like, people have to understand that it's like you just have to.
Discipline.
You just have, yeah, it's a lot of discipline, and it's just being consistent, and it's just putting the work out there. And you have been, you've been open to like just putting your work out there and not being so afraid. I think a lot of creatives are terrified to put their work out because there's like constant self-doubt, you know, there's imposter syndrome. Like, I have been making music for ages, and I only just really started releasing music this year, and I have been making music for a while. So, and I've got so much music, you know, backed up, and I've literally only just started like releasing the things that I first started making, and it's not even in tune with like where I am now, you know. But I'm like, okay, I just decided to just be vulnerable and just do it because, you know, I'm just getting started. I mean, to talk about the whole like networking situation, I feel like if there's probably not enough like spaces for people to actually like network in that way in terms of being like artists. I don't think there's like spaces or events, you know, geared and directed towards like actually networking.
That's the biggest
And also, I do feel like if sometimes, you know, a lot of artists, and because, I mean, I've been there when I was living here, and we have quite limited ideas of what an artist is, and you will find all these women coming together that are really talented technically, but they don't understand that they need to actually expand a bit more, do more research, and like, you know, create like their own thing. And so that's where the I don't know, the, what do you call it, the intimidation comes, you know, from seeing someone else doing something and then not realizing that actually you don't know what their process was. They probably took a long time to really figure out what they were specializing in. And so I feel like if these women really understood and had a more like broader view of what it is to be an artist, there's so many things, you know.
Sorry, but I agree with that, because like some people would look at my artwork and they'll be like, oh, I want to be like you, like I want to do what you're doing, and I'm like, I've been doing this for 14 years, and you have to like perfect your craft. It's not like I can just teach you like right away and you get it. And I think a lot of people, they don't realize the kind of work that we put into it to get where we are, and then everybody thinks that I'm gonna get there now.
And
I
that
think
probably has
that's
to do with stereotypes that we've held, you know, about art. And I mean, think about art when we were in primary school. Art was just a little elective thing that didn't, you know, it was sort of a
actual thing that you did.
yeah, it's a thing that
at 2 o'clock.
in the afternoon at 2 o'clock, you know, the day's winding down, let's do some art.
But we didn't even really go through like, you know, all the different stages of art and like all the like, you know, you know what I mean, like all the different
And so because
types
it
of
was-
art.
Because it was done in that sort of very casual way, we didn't develop an appreciation, a true appreciation
and also
for
hair,
it.
we get like hair. When you hear the creatives or visual arts, it's like drawing and painting, and everybody gets stuck there and they don't know the broad, you know.
Right.
The amount of things you can do in visual art is crazy. So I think people get deterred from doing it, because I've taught at the primary level for a while, and I've seen talented kids in all aspects of visual arts, and then society just shuts them out, and they're like stifled, and then they suffer in the fields that they're pushed into, and they're wondering, oh, how am I, like, why am I not successful?
Right.
But they need to be, like, they could be successful in this area, but society's like, no, the creatives, it's not gonna work. So.
Well, I think some of that is changing, because we're seeing information coming out, not just in 2020, a very strange year, but we're seeing information coming out that suggests that in a couple years from maybe a decade from now, these traditional academic degrees are not going to have as much value as they once did, and it's more going to be about the natural talents and the people with the skills, right, who are really going to be in demand in the future. But interestingly, the universe is working, right? And I think everybody here seems to have an appreciation of this natural energetic force that pushes us into where we need to be. The universe is working because you're talking about being intimidated, and the question is, where did you find the confidence to pursue the creative career that you're in now?
I mean, for me, it was, it was like survival. I mean, I got to the point where I was like, if I'm not gonna make art, if I'm not gonna do this, then I actually just don't want to exist. It was that extreme. Like I was just like, well, that's all I want to do. And the reason why I had so much confidence is because like I didn't really know. I went in there with blind faith. I didn't really know what I was getting myself into. I generally just, have ideas, and I romanticize the ideas, and I never know how much work it's gonna take and how hard it's gonna be. So that's why I do so many things, because I just like go into it, and I'm like, and then when I'm in it, I'm like, oh my this is insane. And especially like to actually share it, I'll be like, oh my god, why did I do this? Why have I done this? Like, why am I sharing this? Oh my god, it's shit. Everybody's gonna hate it. It's terrible. So what happens is the doubt comes after.
Okay.
So,
and this is like Nadia's, if I feel like I need to puke before I post it.
Yeah.
Odini, because of the background you gave, in all the different things that you actually tried and that you felt you were being pushed into, but you ended up choosing fashion, and you chose menswear of all things as a female from St. Vincent, right? What gave you the confidence to do that?
Well, first I would say that I don't know if I was really pushed so much as I was bored, maybe. I don't know. I've always been a person, like, if I get too comfortable in a place, then I think it's time to move.
Yeah.
So I probably shouldn't say this because I have a job and my bosses are probably watching, but honestly, like, after a while, I'm like, right, we've done this, we've figured this out, so what can we do next, literally? But for fashion, I guess, I don't know. Because when I started, I thought I was going to design women's clothes, because that's what you think fashion, you think women's clothes. You get there and then you're like, oh wow, there's so much here, because my background was science. So I did physics, chemistry, maths. This is biology, this is what I did. And then I got there and they were like, right, you can't get into this degree, you have no art background, you have to do a foundation course. And then we had to do like art history, we had to do, and it was really cool because we got to do things like textile design, we got to do journalism, because we had to do like fashion marketing, fashion journalism. So literally the foundation course was like everything. And at the end of that, I was like, textiles, this is it. So we were like making prints, like they'd give us like big classrooms and we'd be making like drawing on the floor. It was just like mental, it was like amazing. And then when I got into school now and I was like, I'm gonna be a textile designer, I was like, yeah. And then we had to do knitwear, and I was like, I'm gonna be a knitwear designer. I was like, this is great. And then we did menswear, and then it was just like, holy crap, this is actually it. So for me, it's usually a case of I'm bored. Mm-hmm. What can I do now? So literally like 2 years ago, I'm living in St. Vincent. I'm like, business, okay, this is fun, but I'm bored. I'm going to move to Asia. Literally, that was it. I'm gonna move to China. Literally, that was it. I woke up, I was like, I'm gonna move to China. I told my mom, and then like 3 months later, I was in China. And at first she was like, yeah, whatever. And then I was like, okay, so you get your visa. This is what you do, and it's just something to do. And so I don't know. My whole process is just I'm bored with myself right now.
Yeah.
How do I improve this? So like with my fashion, there are times I get frustrated with myself because I'm like, especially I guess living here, there's certain things that people just probably would never wear because they're still living in that, this is what we saw on television last night, so we're wearing this. And in my head, I'm like, it's so beyond that. So I get frustrated with creating clothing here because I'm like, I have to make the same pair of short pants like 100 times. Like, this is frustrating to me. And so I get bored. So then I'm like, what else can I do? And I think that's a struggle I had a very long time, like right before I went to China. I literally was sat there like, I've literally made this shirt, this pants, this jacket. If I try to make this kind of jacket, no one's gonna buy it here because they don't luckily there are a few people outside of St. Vincent who see my stuff and they're like, that's dope, this is cool. And there are people when I was overseas, they'd be like, oh my gosh, this is so cool, this would be so great, like if you were in like Asia and stuff like that. So I think that's for me, what pushes me. How do I not be bored with myself and what I'm doing that kind of way without having to fly to the other side of the world? This is my challenge right now. Literally, I was looking at tickets the other day. I'm like, no, we're gonna stay, we're gonna figure this out. How can I figure that out in this space to be interesting to myself? Because if I can satisfy myself, then everything else falls in place. And I don't know if because I'm an only child, my mother says I'm stubborn, but if I have an idea in my head, I don't care what you could tell me, I don't want to hear nothing. This is what I'm doing. And you could say this is the worst decision ever, and I'm like, but I'm gonna do it anyway. And if it goes like horribly wrong, then it goes horribly wrong. We just take that and we do something else. But it's just for me not to be bored, because I think if I'm not bored, then hopefully other people would also not be bored, I guess. Yeah.
And this is a good segue into me asking Zara. Zara, I know that you have initiated a couple of things, and personally, because we have a personal relationship, so I know there were some ups and downs, but how do you get the confidence, and this is for anybody who's ever considered, you know what, there's something that is missing here, there's something that is missing for my group of people, there's something that I want to do, I feel like I need to do it, but I don't feel confident enough to make this happen. Starting Happy Brown Girls could not have been an easy decision, because how do you know that it's going to be supported, right? What gave you the confidence to do that?
Well, it was scary. I'll admit it. I just jump. I'm a jumper. I jump in head first all the time, and sometimes I jump into a pool of rocks, and sometimes I jump into a pool of water, and sometimes I jump into a pool of money. Being a crazy business person, and you know, I just realized I was a creative. Literally about a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, my creative friends said, you know, you are creative because you create spaces, you create things, you create businesses, and you know, and it's scary to start something and to be vulnerable. It's scary. But as you move through life and you create relationships, and you realize that everybody is, well, not everybody, but there are a lot of people that are just like you. Yeah. And once you put down those barriers and you kind of start to feel more comfortable within yourself and within your spaces create other spaces. Your energy creates or absorbs or transfers to other people's energy, and then it just kind of moves throughout from, in my case, women to women. I don't want to use the word manipulated, but I just manipulated my space and my energy and my time, and I just said, you know what, F it, let's just do it. You know, we have the space. Some people are gonna come and some people are not, but as to what Enye said, we have to remain consistent. And once we try to stay consistent, then in our community, you become known for specific things. So we started with vision boarding, and vision boarding is not a new thing. Oprah was doing it back in the 90s. You know, so we started with vision boarding, and then we were the vision board people, you know. And then I'm like, we should have a conversation about self-worth, or we should have a conversation about vaginas, or we should have a conversation about this and that, because, you know, from mothers to daughters, there's not a lot of conversations. It's just, you know, do what I say, not as I do. And, you know, we just kind of move through all of these generations. And I come from a long line of really, really strong women of color. And they've gone through really traumatic situations in their lives. And I'm very blessed and I'm very lucky to be able to break those generational curses and move through for my, you know, my children, my child and my grandchildren and so on, and to build and to create that strength. But, you know, sometimes it's a shot in the dark and you just have to do it, you know, and some days are very successful and some days are not. but it's the consistency that's there, and it's about relationship building and showing women that they can trust you, you know. And in our community, it's very hard to gain the trust of people, of women, and you know, you just have to just teach women and show them, like, yes, I'm a safe space. What you say is not going to leave this space, and you know, let's try and do it. All of these women here are very passionate about what they do, and I feel like every woman has a passion of something. You know, it could be my head is so crazy. It could be like toenail clippings. It could be like, you know, just weird random things. And you know, once you have that passion for something, when you have that facilitator to say, you know what, you can do it, this is how, let's write it down, let's plan it out, and then go free. I've helped and support many women in their businesses, and now they're kind of off and running, you know. So I'm a creator in a different sense, where I don't make anything like with my hands, I make it with my mind, you know. So I give people the space to kind of be themselves and run through the prairie with the flowers and just be open and free and just, you know, do it.
Right.
I'm rambling.
Something that is coming through in basically all of your contributions so far is this thing of you've been listening to yourselves a lot. And I dare say that if you were listening to others, you probably wouldn't be pursuing what you are, at least not so passionately. How does one tap into self? How does one trust self? Because we all, as women, and please let me say, this is by no means anti-male, right? I know we're talking women a lot, but this is not anti-male. This is just something that is very specific to females, right? That, you know, the female experience. It is said that women have intuition, right? A just very strong, correct intuition. How have you tapped into your intuition? Is that something that you would say is very important in being able to pursue your dreams?
Well, yes, you have to be able to, but some of us just don't know how.
Exactly.
You know, when I had my son and it was time to breastfeed, I didn't know what I was doing, and there was nobody to teach me, so he did not breastfeed. You know, so sometimes we move through life and things happen, and the first thing is to make that decision to say, okay, I have had enough of whatever traumatic experiences that keep on happening over and over again. And then secondly, it's self, it's time. I don't think that we give ourselves enough time. And sometimes it's not just intuition, it's the universe, it's God that's speaking to you and saying, okay, well, this is the pathway, or this is the pathway.
How do you feel that? How do you experience
It's
that?
natural because we are of God.
Yes, but how do I recognize it? How do I recognize the voice of God?
It takes
the voice of
practice.
the universe?
It takes practice.
Because there are many voices that have that benefit.
Yes, there are many voices.
Right? There's a voice telling you, but there's a voice telling you, are you crazy? You can't do that. You're going to fail. And there's another voice that's saying, or it's not, maybe it's not a voice, it's just a feeling that says, but this is what I love. I naturally feel like doing this thing.
Once you recognize the difference between ego and self,
Yes.
ego is the one that tells you, girl, it's trash. And then it's self that's going to be like, you know what, you can do it. So you have to be able to recognize, and you won't be able to recognize the two until you start to do self-work. And it involves reading, it involves, you know, not, people say meditation, you know, you can start with guided meditation versus, you know, just sitting down in a room listening to the fan go, you know, but it starts with practice of something. You know, once you start to practice of something and you start to work within yourself, then you'll be able to decipher ego versus self.
And I know what, sorry, Go ahead, Ege.
I want to say something about what Zara said about reading. I totally agree with that. I think like as humans, like stories are really important to us. That's how we navigate life. I mean, that's why the Bible is like the most popular book ever, because we needed that kind of guidance. So I found, like from my experience, that I would always find a book during a time in my life where I really needed it. It was like a transitional time. And so like in the past, it was like I was living in, well, I was basically like homeless. I was living in a squat in London with my friends. We were all musicians, we were all making music, and it was really hard because it was very cold, but I got the book Just Kids by Patti Smith, and if you're an artist, it's a great book to read. So I was reading it at that time, and I felt so many parallels, and that gave me a lot of confidence to just keep like doing my work, because Patti Smith was, just starting out in the book, just starting out as a musician, poet, and all of her experiences, and like, her collaborations with Robert Mapplethorpe. So it was similar with me, where like I was living with my friends who are all artists, and we were trying to make music, and we didn't really know what we were doing, but we were just constantly communing together and creating. And so I think like it's important to read and like or find people that are like doing something that you're curious about, doing something that you want to maybe pursue. So you find the people that are like leaders in that field, and then you like you tap into them and you just read everything about them. And so that I find that really helpful.
Yeah. Agreed. I can totally relate to that. That a good book. That helps you transition, because we all go through so many different transitions,
Exactly.
and
So
sometimes
many,
a book and reading that story
Yeah.
of someone else and how they got through their own journey,
Yes.
it gives you some confidence
It
to make
definitely
it through
does,
yours
yeah.
as well. Nadia, what has it been like listening to Nadia? Tuning
It's
into
really
Nadia.
terrifying. It's really terrifying this last year, guys. I'm not gonna lie. No, but I mean, I guess for me, like the thing I tried to go back to is like, what was that feeling when I was a child, when I was in my most absolute present, state of mind? Like, what was the best feeling in the world? I always remember like going to the beach with my parents and just floating. So I mean, for me, like that's kind of how I ended up doing a lot of the underwater photography that I do now, because in my mind I was trying to get back into that feeling somehow. So I think that helps me. Not everybody has the luxury of like silence and solitude. I mean, that's like a big thing for me. Like if I don't have that, that really helps block out the noise of other people trying to inform like how you make decisions, or like how you could make work that they might be interested in. I have no interest in that. I'm like, I need to figure out a way to tap into myself, and the best way to do that is to be in the sea. There's absolutely nobody out there with me. I don't have to hear anybody yapping in my head telling me anything. So I mean, that really helps to like figure out a way, whatever that space is for you. I mean, I know some people are parents, they don't have that time where they could switch off from their children or their family or whatever, but even if you can just find 10 minutes in your day, whether it's in the bathroom or like outside on the porch or something, to just have some a moment to yourself, that really makes a huge difference in terms of listening to what you need. Because in that kind of space, it's just your thoughts, like whether there's good thoughts or bad thoughts, it doesn't matter. Like they're happening, and that really does teach you a lot about what's really going on in your mind. And when you listen to those thoughts, like you can understand that a lot of times, like the person that's like your worst enemy is actually you. Like those voices are coming from yourself, So, I think being able to figure out a way to tap into that for you is really important. But yeah, my journey into that, like understanding myself, is terrifying, of course, like for anybody, because you realize like how much you actually internalize from other people, whether it's from growing up, whether it's just like random man on the street telling you something, or things you heard in school from other kids or your parents or whatever, So that making that space for yourself is important.
This is a conversation that I think has become very, very common, where we are doing a lot of self-work, I find, and I'm not sure if it is related to age, or if it is related to just society discovering, or the world discovering, this idea of self-work. What do you think? Is this something that happens when you hit 30? Or is it something that, we're just becoming more woke?
I think it's this era.
Yeah.
I think we're
It's
I think
the
it's
era.
this era
now.
overstimulated and
Yeah.
people need
Yeah.
to cut off.
Yeah, that's
and,
what
I mean,
it is.
everybody's feeling it.
Yes.
Even us who live in a beautiful place naturally.
Yeah.
So people are feeling quite overwhelmed. I mean, I'm not gonna knock technology because I think it's one of the greatest things to happen to us,
Yes.
but it's also been deeply responsible for a lot of our neurotic behaviors. And some people can't really cut off that well from it like others can. So it's influencing us in a huge way, and it's really affecting the way we move through the world.
Yeah.
So do you have hope that teenagers, people in their early 20s are, girls, right? In their late teens and early 20s, do you think that they're able to recognize the importance of self-work? Even at that young stage, do you think that's possible?
I mean,
now?
I think it depends on what people are dealing with at a certain point in life. Some people might go through traumatic experiences at that age, which will force them to do that work whether they want to or not.
Right.
But at that age, nobody's really thinking about how do I work myself, how do I gain confidence, just how do I become successful, where do I go next to drink? I mean, that's
How do I
not
get
just
everyone to
handful.
like me?
But I mean, I think with age it does kind of come.
Yeah.
I mean, not that I'm super old or anything, but
No.
I've definitely been much more conscious of how these things affect me now at this age.
The reason I ask is because we've been talking about how it's so important to listen to self and pursue, to know what to pursue and to get the confidence to actually do it. And being creative and being passionate about something, I don't think comes with age. It doesn't have an age limit. So before I go any further on that, Zara, you had a
Well, I wanted
contribution.
to just say that we're in the age of awakening,
Yeah.
and naturally our children are exposed to that mentality. I think that the generation before us was about working and creating wealth and
Yes.
those kind of things.
Yes.
But I think that through television, our children don't even watch TV anymore, through their iPads and their phones and so on, the mantras of an awakened spirit is naturally flowing through them. I remember my son at 6 years old was talking about chakras. And that was before I was even into yoga or anything else like that. But it's just his stimulation and the things that he was exposed to as a child, So I think that naturally, because we're moving through this age in time, our children are now, their third eye is awakened. And I don't want to get too heebie-jeebie on it, but they are more awakened than we were at their age. And it's seeping through in their shows, and it's seeping through even in the way that we speak to them. And of course, our environment does make a huge difference. But the way that we manage our children now is a lot different than the way that our parents managed us.
Definitely.
So it's definitely different now, and it will continue through the generations.
Yes. And so would you say, panelists, that it would be progressively easier to pursue creative passions as this era of awakening has arrived?
Yeah, I think the whole world is, creatives will always be at the bottom of the barrel. It's not just Simmons. I mean, some places are a bit more evolved. Of course, developed countries are a bit more supportive and they have the funding. I know Berlin just threw in $1 billion into the creative industry. I mean, that's phenomenal when you think about it. To have your government recognize how important it is to support that. I mean, I don't think people understand the breadth and scope of what creativity means. I think they just think artists are some, kind of
Crazy.
airy kind of people who don't know how to do business,
Right.
but it's not true because we all have to have an understanding
Yes.
of business to what we do.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's true. I mean, of course, there's a certain way that we create that's a little bit less typical than a scientist, for example, who has a formula or limitations and conditions that they operate under. I mean, our ability to do things is a bit more free flowing. It has to be. But it's absurd to not support it. I mean, glasses, people design these, like these chairs we
Yeah,
sit in. It's
exactly.
like,
Well, everything.
it's creative people that actually create these things. The clothes you wear, I mean, people like, this is literally like the foundation of our society.
Life,
you
yeah,
know?
exactly.
So I mean,
Yeah.
to like not even put a focus on that and
Yeah.
just say like, well, this is what you need to focus on becoming is a bit ridiculous,
Yeah.
because then it's like if everybody gets into like the medical field or like business, and of course those things are completely, totally important, but we all don't have the capacity to do that, and like doctors also need creative
Well, I
people.
was gonna say you have to be creative to be a doctor. You have
Like
to be
who
creative.
designs the
Everything that you
injections,
do,
like,
exactly.
The,
Designs
even the
packaging,
speculum that we
Yeah.
have to engage
But even the
with.
way you do stuff,
In women's health.
you know, all that stuff. Yeah.
That
Yeah.
takes some creativity that used to look
Yeah.
horrible and
Yeah.
feel horrible, and I think now there's a more modern design.
I mean, we
They're always
a little bit,
constantly
like what we do, I think, might be a little bit more out there in the sense, like fashion, for example. Look at like runway fashion. Like people are like, why would you ever like make something like that? But it's like there are a group of people who are absorbing that visual, and they are the people that are making the objects that you use every day. Like they're influenced.
But
by
everything
those
is like
things.
trickle effect though
Yeah.
with fashion, you know. That's why they have like couture. Couture starts at the top, and then all the other designers see what couture designers are doing, and then they do their own version, and then the high street see it, and so everything just is like a trickle down. So yeah,
I mean, that capacity for the human mind
Yes,
to go
100%.
beyond what is normal is so important, because it's really what makes a society thrive. Like, you think of any major civilization that stood the test of time, the Mayans, the Egyptians, like Asians, whoever, like, the reason that these societies thrive is because the language moves forward, the foods, you know, the arts, like, these are the things that, like, sustain the test of time. Like,
Definitely.
it's so important.
It is. It is. Okay. Do all of you work full time in your field? Sarah does, Sharika does, Nadia does, Enye?
Not really.
Not really.
Not really. No.
Odini does not.
I mean, everything I do is like it's like kind of art focused. But no, I haven't been able to like do music full time in the last couple of years. But it's fine because I'm interested in lots of different things. So you know, I kind of dabble in lots of different things. I think it's just like my personality. Maybe it's my style. Like, I mean, right now I'm creating a space, a cafe, and it's going to be a space for lots of artists. And, you know, I want to do like lots of music there and whatnot. So I am creating like a community space where you can enjoy and have a coffee and do work, but then also there will be, you know, ways for other artists to develop, because when I was in London, something that really helped me to write and create music was doing jam sessions with my friends, and you know, we would just have a space to do that, and I feel like if there's not enough of that in St. Vincent, so yeah.
Gotcha. Odini, I know you said that you feel as though the universe says, okay, for this moment, let's just relax a bit, in terms of Peter Odini. But it's not always going to be like that. The universe is going to say, nope, it's time to push again and get busy. How do you manage, you know, having a different job, being in a different space? You're in marketing.
Yeah. Honestly, I'm a bit conflicted because I actually do like my job, because marketing is something that I also fell into that kind of accident. Well, yeah, fell in, yeah. And it's something that I've actually grown to love. I've actually worked within marketing for over about 7 or 8 years in different capacities. In my eye, Peter Odini does not stay a fashion brand though. In my eye, it grows into something else that kind of does incorporate that whole marketing aspect, that whole, it's like a creative agency. And Nadia and I have kind of spoken about this before, because again, my personality, doing the same thing for the same person all the time, it's limited. So I know the time will come when I'm going to be like, this has to change. Now this, don't look at me. But I know but I know the time will come and Pete Odini will again pop back into my head, and because of my personality, again, it's not going to come back in the same way that it was before, because I don't think I would allow for that to happen. So it has to kind of evolve somewhat. What it will evolve into, I have no idea. Like, I have like vague ideas. Like, I have these certain things. I start writing things down because my memory is really bad. So I like write little notes down. And so there's like a collection of ideas of things that I want to do. And it's just like, okay, if I need to do this, what do I need to do in order to get this done? So I'm kind of like setting like foundations for different things, hopefully. So when I feel like, okay, now is the time, I can be like, right, let's do it, that kind of a way. I know there will be some aspect of marketing in there. I know there's some aspect of that branding, that whole collaborative working with people to create something kind of cool and exciting. There's going to be fashion involved. There's going to be music involved, because with my brand, it's always been really linked to like musicians and stuff like that, because they kind of have that energy that I kind of work off as well. But what will it be? I have no idea. And that's kind of like what makes it exciting, because if I wake up today and I know exactly what's going to happen at my job today, I don't want to go to work. That's the kind of person. I want to go to work, and even though it's going to frustrate me, at least I'm like, okay, all right, that was unexpected. How do we fix this up? And it comes back to the whole design thinking, because a lot of people are like, oh, right, you should study academics. You should read all these books and these textbooks, and then you just regurgitate everything that you read in this textbook, and then you're going to be brilliant at life. And then I'm like, no, not particularly. It always works out that way. And I think that's something that's overlooked, again, what we mentioned, where there's not enough emphasis placed on art and visual, like creative thinking. Because that whole idea of creative problem solving, there are things that I know, to me it seems so obvious, like the answer's so clear, and I sat there in a room and I'm like, why is no one else like picking this up? Or somebody who, me and them are looking at them like, right, we could solve this in like 5 minutes, and then like 3 hours later the rest of them are still like, we're just sat there like, guys, this is not. But it's just the way I was trained, the way other people were trained, because fashion school, I didn't have exams, which is like the best thing ever. Like, we didn't have tests or things like that. It was literally like, this is your design project. Research it, you come up with concepts, you have to refine it, you have to keep refining it. If you want to make a certain shape, which is the part that I like, because I really like constructing things. How do I make this go from a sketch to 3D where it fits on the body? How do you, so it's like engineering in a way as well, but it makes you think like, if I sew it like this is not going to work. It will probably look right, but how will they get it on their body? So that kind of thing pushes you to start developing these solutions to like honestly, I think they should put artists in government, because trust me, trust me. There's so many projects I see happening right here in St. Vincent. I'm just like, this is like a no-brainer. Like, you give me 3 creative thinkers, we could get this done in like half the time for like probably half the money. Because that's how we work as well. We never have money. So we always have to figure out how do we get this done with like no money, no help, no resources. And this is how we kind of function. And I think if they really kind of open it and just not let, like, I don't want to say it because people are going to be offended. So let me not say that. But like, you know, the lawyers and the so on, like, do these things, because they're just thinking A plus B gets to C, but we're like, well, if you go that way and then you come back around this way, it actually works out better. It'll probably look better, because we're always thinking kind of aesthetically as well. And then we probably get it done for a whole lot less time and money, because this is just how we're like, because me, when I'm buying fabric, I'm like, you know what, if I buy just like half yard less, I will figure out a way how to make this work within that pattern, because I don't have a choice, that kind of way. So I think that's a lot that's missing here. This whole creative thinking. It's always like, oh, he has like a master's in whatever, and I'm just like, he still doesn't know anything. Like, I'm sorry.
No emphasis on the he. It could
Oh,
be
the
a
she. It could be the she. No, it can be she. But I think there needs to be way more priority given to, and it's something I wish Kimmy was here, because she always talks about it. Design thinking. Design thinking. It's something in fashion, because
She's watching.
she probably is, but she's just like, a lot of people can sew, a lot of people can make clothes, but not a lot of people can design clothes.
Right.
So when you look at it, you see sometimes you see a lot of the same thing happening, and it's because literally people are just learning how to sew.
And no pattern cutting.
There is no
as well.
pattern cutting.
Yeah.
There is no design. There is no research. There is no looking at what happened, things to kind of shape an idea of, oh, this could look interesting if I did it like this, that kind of way. But it's all just, this is how you make a pants. I'm making a pants. That's it.
Yeah,
So-
we're so used to formulas.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
Okay, so we have a few more minutes before we open up the floor for questions from our audience. But in a post I saw recently, it was stated that no one talks about the amount of mourning involved in growth.
Amount of
mourning.
morning.
Mourning.
Like the
Yeah, like you lost someone and you have to grief.
Oh,
Grief.
mourning.
Mourning, yes.
Oh.
Sorry if I was unclear there, but no one talks about the amount of mourning or grief, the amount of letting go, this sad letting go thing that you have to do as you grow.
Oh.
Yeah.
I'm figuring through
Where you are now, in what you're doing now, in the creative industry, have you had to mourn? And do you look back now on the things that you have mourned with gratitude?
I'm currently.
You're currently mourning.
In the sense of like projects you've had to let go, or like
Projects,
things that have
relationships,
Yeah.
things that you tried,
Mm.
failed, directions you wanted to head into didn't work out.
Yeah, I mean, I guess for me, like I've had like so many different types of losses in my life, and I mean, it's only now that I'm a little bit old I've been able to realize that gap that is left is a kind of a blessing in a way, because then you have to figure out, how do I fill this? Like how do I reimagine this emptiness or the space inside of me now in a new way? Which is a painful process of like filling up a space, especially if you're thinking about somebody who's passed away, or projects that have failed, and it's definitely like it's a process getting to a point where you can like appreciate what has happened, and you're like, okay, this is the direction I actually need to go in now. I mean, I don't know how to advise. Everybody grieves differently, and everybody fills that space in different ways. I mean, for me, like I filled up with images, and like I just shoot a lot. Like I just shoot a lot until I find a direction that feels right, and then I just go in that direction. If that direction doesn't work, then we'll just find another one.
I think for me, I'm an eternal optimist. So when things don't go the way that I expect it to go, it's very hard for me, and I'm very dramatic, so it makes it even worse. And when you work very hard, I work very hard, and when it doesn't work out, or when you're working with people and it doesn't, bad things happen. It's hard to kind of get back, and then you walk with that trauma a little bit. I've had businesses that have failed and miserably, where there's controversy and all of those things, and it's really, really hard to recuperate from those feelings. And then when it's time, my first business that I created was very successful, still very successful. It had momentum, started it up in 3 weeks. It kicked off, everything was great, still great. And then the second business was a nightmare, and I want to open up another business now outside of Happy Brown Girls, and I've been dragging my feet for about 8 months, and it's very hard to move through those feelings. And the vigor that I had with my first business and the excitement is no longer there because of that residual trauma, that PTSD, of just having to go through and being hurt by something that you wanted, something that you created. It was there. You can touch it, taste it, feel it, and then it's just not there anymore. So there is a mourning period. I guess I'm still grieving. There is that mourning period of creating something and it's not there anymore. But you just have to just kind of try and push through and take what you can, and not try to make the same mistakes in the future. But it's the level of doubt. Once that seed of doubt has been created, it's very hard to, I don't even want to say bury it, because when you bury seeds, they grow. but to eradicate it from your mental state in order to be more successful in the future?
Well, I have learned to, before, I think I was a person that would let things get to me a lot, and then I would hold on to it, and I'd be very irritated by it. But then, like, turning 30 for me was like turning like 70 in my head. But I've just gotten to a point where I just don't care anymore. Like,
That's great.
letting go, whatever happens, happens. I look at everything like there's a purpose behind it. Like, every disappointment is for a reason. So I don't really dwell on things anymore. And then, like, in the creative industry, you meet people that's like not in the same headspace, and then you want to strangle them sometimes, but it's like, you know, you just say, you know what, just let it go and move forward. So I think when we dwell on the negatives for a long time, I find that my creative processes get slowed down. Like, I just feel like not doing anything. And so, like, I find letting go of it and just moving on, thinking of the next thing, that just helps me push forward. So that's how I deal with that. Like, I just don't care anymore about the disappointments, and I just move on. It doesn't happen.
Would you say this is excellent, really, because the ability to do that it takes tremendous strength.
It's you
Strength of mind, really.
You kind of have to, like, you know, learn to do it. It's not, and I'm just getting into it. Like, it's still gonna tickle you, but just let it go. Like, you just block it out and just move forward. Like, you distract yourself with different things. Think about, like, play with things. Like, go out, you know, see what you can take. Like, see how you can take that negative stuff and just, like, pack it in the back there, and just, like, do other things. Like, it doesn't even have to be, like, it doesn't have to be art. Like, I can step away from the art and just do something else to get my mind out of that thinking, and then just forget about it sometimes.
Do you feel like we don't want to go on cliches, because cliches feel like just that. Sometimes you're going through a tough moment, and then somebody says something like, it's all for a reason. But and then you think, okay, yeah, I keep hearing it's all for a reason. But truly,
it is
truly, that isn't it redirection? Isn't it all redirection? It redirects you.
And if you don't want to think of it as it happened for a reason, just don't think about it at all. That's my thing. Just let it go. Because holding on to it's just gonna bury you even further, right? So just let it go and move on to the next thing. You don't have to hold on to that.
Agreed, completely. Final question. Do you think that your success, or success in the creative industry generally, is it more training, or is it more natural ability? It's fine, that's fine, I'm asking.
It's more experience. I think, combination of, like, yes, obviously starting off with natural ability and experience. Experience and I think the experience and the doing of the thing, it is like what is it? Teaching? Training. Yeah, I think that is training. Like, the constantly doing, you're training yourself, and you just like keep like chipping at the ice block. That's what I call it. I have like this massive ice block, and I'm just like chipping at it till I'm gonna create a beautiful sculpture, and that's the metaphor for how I do it. It's just.
And I like that you mentioned that, because nowhere did you say it requires formal training. And when I say formal training, you know, when we think we need to perfect a skill, or we need to develop in some way, sometimes, you know, we grew up in this world that says go to school, right? So we feel like we need to go to an institution at all times. Now you're self-taught.
Yeah, I mean, I was fortunate in the sense that I had two creative parents. My dad was an architect, my mother was a seamstress, so I did have that kind of foundation of like creative thinking parents who were very supportive of what I did.
Yeah, the best.
And the way I actually rebelled against them was going into sciences in high school and saying I was going to become a doctor. So that was, what was wrong with you?
Oh my God, imagine that with your dad. Oh my God.
So like my dad wanted me to become an architect, and I think finally when I realized, like, okay, maybe I should be doing something creative. he was excited about that. He was still disappointed that it wasn't architecture, but he was happy that at least I understood now that this is what I should be doing. And I mean, unfortunately, he passed away quite suddenly when I was young. Like I was just about to get into film school and go away and study. And then that didn't happen, so then I ended up having to just like figure out a way to make my life work in St. Vincent. Yeah. So I went into, again, video production and kind of taught myself how to use a camera alongside that. And I mean, I can say like St. Vincent, I've learned everything that I need to learn in St. Vincent. And a lot of people think I'm like, went to like some like, great like art school in London or whatever. And, like, I mean, not saying that there is total value in having that formal training. I understand, like I speak to other people and there's a language, there's a way that they speak that I don't speak. I don't speak like that. Like I've learned the language through experience. But I think anybody, I mean, like if you have enough self-discipline and kind of tenacity, you can learn to do anything. And St. Vincent is, I mean, we have a lot of limitations here, and of course, like it's a difficult place to be accepted if you're interested in the creative field, but you can do it. Like, again, I said, I mean, I had good parents in the sense that they were supportive, but if we have a community of people that are supportive to young people who are interested in doing that, like that helps.
Yeah.
That visual literacy can really propel you and inspire you to want to get into something. So.
And to back up Maggie on that, I think coming from studying fine arts, I mean, I tell people all the time, it isn't that important. Like, you get a certificate or a piece of paper at the end of it, and then you're able to say, oh, I have my degree, but it's not that important, right? Teaching yourself, when you're studying, you are basically teaching yourself anyway. So it's like they're like, you're adults, figure it out on your own. Well, in art school, for me. So I think, you still have to push yourself a lot. So don't worry about, sometimes I feel like people put a lot of pressure, and I can't afford to go and study now. Yes. And like, I'm gonna suffer if I don't study now, but start building yourself before, and there's always people, you can be 90 and get your degree, right? So it doesn't have to happen now. You can just start that foundation. And then sometimes people realize that, just starting now, they just never end up in school because,
But there's so many things available online too. I mean, like everything that I've learned is online. I mean, there are workshops available. There's a school of YouTube. Like you literally like just think of anything you want to learn and just go online and be like, okay, this is how I want to edit my pictures. Like, just go out and figure it out. Ask people in the field. Like people are very willing.
Speak to people.
I mean, I'm always very willing to like give advice if anybody's ever interested in me. And that's the thing, I think you have to be open and remember that there are other people out there trying to get to a certain point that you are as well. And if you have the knowledge to share it. Don't like harbor the knowledge and not give it to people. I mean, it doesn't serve you in the end,
Hopefully we're all moving away from this idea that success is a pie.
Yeah.
And so if I give you some of my knowledge and if I share some of my know-how with you, then I'm taking away a piece of my pie that it's not pie.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, totally.
This has been a really good discussion. At this point, we're going to open it up to the audience here with us physically to see if there are any questions for our panelists. Anything that came up during the discussion that you think you want to find out more about. Now is your time. Yes.
How would you describe the biggest highlight in your creative career? It doesn't have to be a period, it can be a moment as well.
I don't think I've had my biggest highlight just yet. I think that there are little bursts of like, okay, we did that, and high five, but I feel like there's more to come, I mean, it's just kind of like, okay, what's next? For me.
I'm trying to think. Honestly, I think probably it's kind of really sad, but at the same time not. I don't know. But like the first time I sold like my first piece of clothing, like somebody came up to me and they were like, oh my god, this is amazing, love it, need to have it. And I was like, really? You want to give me money for this? Like, and I remember oh my god, it was so, okay, I'm not going to call names. But it was in Trinidad, and I remember like they're like, I'm gonna put it on now, and I'm like, but you, and they were like, yeah, I'm going, and they went to the dressing room and they put it on, and they were like wearing it at the event, and I went, no, come on, not allowed. Anywho, and yeah, so it's like moments like that because, and I always say this to people, like I don't have like, I know people say you should have some sort of business sense. I have no business sense because for me, I would probably give away my stuff because I just like the fact that people like wear it. So I'm like, so like, yeah, that moment for me I think was one, just the fact that somebody else thought what I thought was cool was also cool, and they wanted to give me money for it.
Yes.
I think, well, there's so much more I can do, and like but for me, I think, well, I do a lot of portraits. Realism is my go-to style. That moment when I deliver those portraits to my clients and they're like, that's like a highlight to me because I thrive on like, making people happy with what they're paying for. So like I think each time I do a portrait I get a little burst of, that's my highlight for now.
I mean, honestly, I've had many highlights in the last year, but I have to say, like, the one thing that really moved me, and I felt like, okay, this is exactly what I wanted to accomplish. I had an exhibition, a solo show in the UK last year, and the work was about, young boys at Long Rock jumping off, and one of the boys I had documented, it was like 6 or 7 years ago now, he would have been a teenager then, but he's an adult. He's like a police officer working in St. Kitts. And one of the images that was really kind of like the standout image that everybody kept on sharing, it was blown up big on a wall. And he just happened to be in the UK at the same time, and he went to see it. And I was like, okay. I was like, okay, I can die now, I can die now. And like, he felt like, and I still like maintain a relationship with him. And it was like, it's like my childhood, like growing up with these guys and doing this, and it's just, it must be like so like incredible to be a young boy just having fun, and then all of a sudden like you have like your image blown up big and I mean, for me it's amazing, like it's a great experience, but like that is like the peak of it for me.
Go ahead.
No pressure.
I mean, it's gonna be a bit like,
That was really I mean, I love your work. Your work is brilliant, and like you're in Black Futures right now, so that is like for me, that's like everything. Yes, Kimberly Drew is like MoMA. Yeah, so yes, you've had lots of.
I have, but that was.
Yeah, I mean, mine would probably. I mean, obviously, there. Hopefully, there will be more, but mine would have been. I had seen my friend perform at Shepherd's Bush Empire like years ago, and it was like an incredible show. She's an amazing musician, and I always thought, okay, I would love to perform here one day, and it just manifested in a very different way because I ended up opening for this band called La Femme, who I used to listen to a lot, this French band. So I performed with Loose Meat, and we opened for La Femme, and it was like Shepherd's Bush Empire. It was like packed house, and it was amazing. It wasn't my songs because I was performing with Loose Meat, so I was doing like, they basically approached me because they loved like what I did with Elephant Disco, and they wanted me to be the lead singer, so I did that gig, and that was really, really special and incredible because it's like a legendary venue, and I got to open, and it was really fun. It was so much fun. Yeah, I loved it. Yes.
Thank you, guys. Any other questions? Yes.
Yes, I have someone viewing from the live stream. They ask if, as women, they feel guilty for pursuing their own goals as opposed to probably following the traditional roles expected of them by society.
Good question. Good question. Especially how many of us have families here? And yeah. And a little twist on that question, which I think the audience member would appreciate, is, veering away from traditional roles can also veer away from traditional placement in family and responsibilities in the family. How does that feel generally?
Well, as a new mom, I mean, my child is 2 years old, but it did take me a long time to get back, because yes, I did feel guilty. I felt like if I should be giving all my time to my kid and, you know, to give him like the best nurturing. And so when I did start getting back into doing music or like releasing music, it's taken me a long time to finally be like, actually, this has been your passion, so you need to just like dive back into it. But it's taken me a really long time I've been like slowly working into it. But yeah, there is a lot of guilt of like, you know, not actually, sometimes I don't spend enough time doing my thing, my music, because I'm like trying to be a mom or like do my other business, and, you know, to sustain myself as an artist, because I'm an independent musician. I don't have a machine behind me, so I still have to, you know, have an income so I can do my music. So yeah, there's a lot of guilt, but I feel like you just work through it, and there's always the bigger picture. You just always have to remember about the bigger picture.
Well, for me, it's a little bit different because I am a co-parenting mom. So when I am not actively parenting, it gives me time to be able to create in that space. The way my viewpoint is that my son is going to grow up and he's going to leave me eventually. So I still have to do what I have to do. But you know, it's a balance, and I mean, it sounds very cliche, but it's really just doing what I want to do and fitting them into that space, and just making sure that nobody dies, and you know, we just try to do the best that we can. But sometimes you drop the ball, but when you have a great co-partner, it makes it a lot easier for those women who don't have that. Single moms, I don't consider myself a single mom at all. I'm a co-parenting mom. Single moms have it really, really tough, and it's a really, really hard balance, and my heart and mind goes out to all single moms out there. But this life force is mine, you know, this life force is mine, and I have to be just a little bit selfish, and I believe that women, especially women of color, we are selfless. We give ourselves to all capacities of society, all capacities of marriage, all capacities of children, all, you know, and it literally rips us apart, you know, and we unfortunately die, and it's like, you know, you have a nice funeral and then everybody goes on about their life. So we're gonna redirect and reposition a little bit and do some things for ourselves now, and you know, see what happens.
Boy, this led me down a little tangent. What's happening in my mind is the perception we have, or that we've been taught about love, that love is all self-sacrifice.
Yeah, right.
It's very self-sacrificial.
Self-love is happening, sister.
Self-love. Imagine if you sacrifice yourself, then there would be nothing. You wouldn't be there
But
to actually look after.
this is how society has been. Our parents, and their parents before them.
But it's changing. You know, when I got divorced, my ex-husband, you know, takes care of my, and I know I'm a sharer. It's okay. My ex-husband, you know, takes care of my son part of the time, and I take care of my son part of the time. And you know, sometimes it's a little frowned upon by society, but he's his dad, and he's half of him, and you know, I don't feel guilty or bad for, you know, having him also raise my son, and it gives me time to develop myself. And you know, when I transition and look down on my life and I get all the answers of the universe, and you know, I can say, you know, at least that I contributed to this world, my energy contributed to this world whilst I was here, you know, and not haunting everybody. You know?
it comes into okay, I did do women's studies in university, right? So I'm always gonna be down this path again. Never anti-male, never ever. Right? But when we start talking about getting equity or equality, whichever one you resonates most with you, we have to start talking about this thing of, well, okay, so males have been males have their own restrictions too, because just the same way we've been, we feel pushed into certain careers and decisions, males have also been pushed along certain lines, right? But arguably there's a lot more freedom on that gender scale, right? In that gender space. So when we are getting to our freedom now, and that's coming, right? It's coming where everybody's going to get to a point where they're comfortable with both genders being free to do as they choose, so long as it's not harmful to other people. That's my belief, right? Then we're going to have to start shattering
gender roles and
these
gender
roles,
spaces.
right? These roles that said, okay, if mom is working, then it better be an 8 to 4, or it better be a 9 to 5 when the kids are in school.
Or to be a teacher. So you're home when they're home.
Exactly. If that's mom's choice, then great. But if that's not mom's choice, then let mom be great. Otherwise, and the family is gonna be okay. But the thing is that, as you said, single moms have a really tough time if they don't have support mechanisms. And it doesn't have to be support from the kids' dads. It could be other members of the family or even friends and so forth. But it's really important. The support is necessary. We're never going to discount that. Yeah. What else we got, guys?
Question. So first of all, I feel very welcome here as a male. So there's a quote I heard recently. It was something like, people don't become artists, artists just become themselves. So my question is very simple. How much of your identity is defined by your art, and vice versa? How much of your art is defined by your identity?
That's a loaded question. I mean, I guess because I've been so fully, for me, like I've been so fully engrossed in what I do, like a lot of my identity is wrapped up in it, but I've been trying to like also discover a bit of myself separate from that and not use but just my art to like validate who I am as a person. I mean, of course, there are like other things I'm interested in. So I guess it's just trying to figure out how, understanding that you're a multifaceted human being, and how do you honor each part of yourself in different ways. I mean, I've always been an artist, so I think, it's kind of difficult to separate myself from that identity. I mean, from the minutes, I was like a child and had the capacity to like figure out like how to create something, I was doing it. So I think for me, like I'm trying to now understand how to separate myself from that identity and figure out what else I'm good at. Like I don't just want to be taking pictures all the time. Like of course there are other things that I enjoy as well. So again, it's just being a human being and exploring, figuring out what you love, what clicks with you, Yeah.
I've always been seen as the art girl forever. I like it that way. I like being creative. That's what I do. I like dabbling in everything creative. I've done fashion design for a while. I've been singing for a long time. Like anything that's hands-on, I put my hands to. So I'm quite comfortable with becoming the artist. So that's for me. That's what I like.
Well, I think for me with my clothes, I think people who know my personality best, they look at my clothes and I think it makes sense like right away. Because a lot of people, again, they see the brand and when they see who's behind the brand, sometimes they're like, what just happened there? But like if you know me, then you kind of know, okay, this totally makes sense. So there's things I've made and will never see the light of day because I don't think it represents me. It's not something I would wear. And I always my mom gets at me for this because she's an accountant. So she's always like, this costs money. You need to sell it. And I'm like, nope. And then I'm like, I'm not going to wear it. I don't think anybody else should be subjected to wear it because it's just not. Like my polka dot shirt, like it's me, So I think for me, my art is very much representational of who I am a lot. And so, yeah. Definitely.
It took me a really long time to write artist on the immigration form. Because I felt like somebody was going to tackle me and be like, what is this? You don't belong inside here.
I really understand that. Like, I feel like if I really grasp that, I've always been like, I grasped it years ago that I'm an artist. I'm not just like making music or like I do lots of different things within the art realm. And I do wish that I realized that, because I've always been an artist, and I feel like if I had realized that, I would have had more sense of like direction.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But yeah, no, I feel like if I've always just, I'm an artist and I live and breathe it, so.
Okay. We have a few more minutes left. Are there any more questions from the audience? Yes.
So I heard throughout the panel when I was here that there needs to be a networking opportunities for us in the island. Well, this is a tier. Is that the word? It's one of our goals for GAL, and actually, as I said, networking, education, and mentorship. So, would you be willing, panelists or audience, to become mentors? Because I would love to establish a mentorship program for girls, because I didn't have the opportunity to have a mentor coming up. So I figured out a lot of stuff by failing, which I feel like somebody could have just been like, hey, don't do that. So that's just my question: is people, if I start a mentorship program, are people willing to come on board with me?
Yes.
Okay, that's it.
She's so smart. Jesus.
Nice. Yeah,
like we can't say no. That would make us look class. Yes.
We don't have to lie. All right. So if there are no more questions, I would like to say thank you to Karen for giving me the chance to moderate this discussion. I feel very blessed to have been in your presence, audience and panelists, to hear from you, to even hear the questions that came from the audience, because it shows, you know, the line of thought that's taking place or that people are on. And I think it was very, you know, obviously informative, but I see so many people being inspired by you sharing and being so open and honest, you know, and sharing your experience as a creative, successful creative, right? In this time when being a creative is not yet an easy thing to head into and to stay committed to. So I applaud you for your bravery and your courage, your determination, and your consistency in doing what you love and being true to yourself. Thank you, because that inspires the rest of us.
Thank you.
And thank you, the audience, for being here with us tonight.
Alright, we're just gonna do a quick vote of thanks, could say. Well, kind of did half of my job for me, so
Sorry.
thank you. No, thank you. Yes, but well, first off, I'd like to thank all the panelists for coming out here and sharing your knowledge and your experience. I think the audience enjoyed it. Right? I'd also like to thank Lafon for doing such a great job being the moderator here. We also have to thank some persons that are behind the background and also organizations, such as the United States State Department, the United States Embassy in Barbados, and the OECS. All right. We'll also like to thank 3-Day Startup, the GAL team, half of which are not here today, but the other two, they would be the male members that you would see. So we do welcome guys here. We're not anti-male. I mean, sometimes they're a bit annoying, but yeah, we're not anti-male. All right, and also Karen G. Freitas. She does a wonderful work. Couple of weeks, months, and we actually plan to have all these things, you know, earlier up in the year, but you know, coronavirus. All right, so But I'm glad we're able to execute them now, and we'd also like to thank you for coming out and showing your support. All right, guys? So thank you so much.